Today on The Report, singer David charged with the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
A family in New Jersey shares home with a family of bears.
Immigrant death toll in ICE detention centers continues to rise.
And movie theaters have a box office comeback in 2026's first quarter. The Report starts now.
Welcome back to The Report. I'm Sergio Gonzalez.
I'm Jerry Martinez.
And I'm Joseph Fausto. Stay in the loop and get updated on campus news by following us on Titan TV's Instagram and TikTok account at Titan TV CSUF.
On Monday, April 20th, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office announced charges against 21-year-old David Anthony Burke in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Burke has been charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances, making him eligible for the death penalty or life in prison without parole. Prosecutors also charged him with lewd and lascivious acts with a child under 14, citing alleged sexual abuse between September 2023 and September 2024. LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell, who was leading the investigation, spoke about the case after Celeste's body was found dismembered and badly decomposed inside the front truck of Burke's impounded Tesla in September of 2025. Authorities say Burke was not immediately arrested, drawing criticism, as investigators initially said they lacked sufficient evidence. Police say Celeste was killed in April 2025 after being invited to Burke's Hollywood Hills home, where she was last seen. Burke's legal team denies all allegations and says they will vigorously defend his innocence. This is a case that we've heard about for quite some time now, dating back to September, and I feel like there's a lot more that comes out about it just over time, and obviously over time it just looks that it's already cruel, but it looks that much more vigorous and that much more cruel. I mean, it's just an overall very disturbing story, but I wanted to hear what you guys had to think of just the way things have transpired and how it's been handled by LAPD and just the media and all.
You're absolutely right when you say like more information is coming out about this case. I mean, even when they first saw the bodies in his car, there's been speculations that the relationship between him and the 14-year-old kind of had dated back, even they were still dating around that time. So maybe 14 years, maybe when she was 13. But there were speculations that it's been like a continuous on and off relationship with the singer. It's devastating to hear about this case. Again, there's still information that is still in the gray area, like it is true that he did kill her, and what are more information that are going to come about in the future. So yeah.
Going back to what you mentioned earlier, I think that it's such a tragic thing that happened, and it is interesting how the way it was handled, in the sense that like this has been in the media, in the news. I initially found out about it through TikTok way back when in September. And the fact that I understand, investigation things takes time, but it does make me wonder, not that this should have gotten more press or more like attention than any other cases, but a lot of people were fans of him and his music and things like that, of him as an artist. And so it's interesting how it's just taken this long to kind of come to a sort of, not even a full conclusion, but like, to finally move to trial and all these things, right? And so I think, again, it's just very, very tragic case all around, and just very frustrating. And I really, my condolences go out to her family. But yeah, the fact that this has been kind of almost dragged out since September, and we're almost in May. And I think even to what I've seen in like TikTok, and I mean, that's been like the primary platform that I've seen, people talk about him and this whole case. And a lot of people analyzing like his music and being like, oh, you could kind of see a sense of, like, in his music, maybe guilt that he was maybe feeling, and written into, like, it's crazy how it all kind of connects in a way. I don't know if you all have anything more you want to add on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I was going to kind of harp on the same point. Like, I mean, overall, the whole case is just incredibly disturbing and disheartening.
Yeah.
But then there's so much that some of his previous fans and even just like your TikTok investigators have kind of gone into his music. They've looked at some of his concert performances or just some of his actions, tweets, posts, whatever that case may be. And each one, I feel like, almost adds up in a sort of way, and it's very like concerning, and also like it's just eerie because you don't see that.
Yeah, I think that was another thing I wanted to say too, is you just never know until you know, I guess. And it's kind of scary to look back and be like, oh my gosh, like it was almost kind of like, I don't want to say foretelling or foreshadowing, but
It kind of was, though,
in a sense, I feel like.
Yeah, it's hard to see, and then you see these concert clips of like, oh, like he's crying a little extra hard at this part where it sounds like he could be singing about a woman that could be Celeste.
Yeah.
And then he's just out there like on stage, just kind of like he's losing his emotions, like he's out there in tears. The audience feels as if they're like kind of in the moment with him because he's singing like a romantic song. But then you look at it months later and it's like, oh my gosh, like this is really like adding up with like somewhat of a timeline. And then it's just, I mean, there's not much more to say other than it's just incredibly disturbing. And like you mentioned, I hope her family gets the justice that they deserve and what they obviously need, like for closure, just clarity. But it's absolutely incredibly bad. Yeah.
For sure.
A New Jersey family says they have been sharing their home with a mother bear and her 4 cubs living right under their house since fall of 2025. This unusual situation turned in a concern when the bears would go through the neighbors' trash at night and chew on wires to the central air unit. Neighbors complain the traffic within the neighborhood due to people trying to see the bears and take pictures after residents Veronica O'Brien Lim posted about the situation online. O'Brien Lim called New Jersey's Fish and Wildfire, but authorities have avoided removing the bears because interfering could separate the cubs from their mother. On April 14th, the entire family of bears emerged after months in the den, with one of the cubs getting stuck in the fence. A fish and wildlife team freed the cub and united it with its mother. Authorities believe the bears came out looking for food because of the warm weather, but could return next week or even the fall to hibernate. Well, I love how it's interesting how we've been seeing a couple of times where bears have gone into like people's homes, residents. I have seen videos of bears going into people's pools. So it's very like, I wonder like what causes bears to come into neighborhoods like this. It's very interesting, but I'm very glad that the bears came. The cubs kind of went to their mothers and they're safe because, of course, it could be tremendous. It could be like very overstimulated for the bears since maybe people, there's cars, they could get hurt. You know, what are your guys' thoughts on this story, really?
I was going to say, I'm no animal expert by any means, but I guess to kind of maybe answer your question, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of times humans are in animal spaces, you know, like we've built neighborhoods and homes and all these things in, I guess, where wildlife would be. And so it's honestly, to me, I feel like it's kind of no surprise that, you know, a bear could show up, but I think to have a whole kind of family of bears and cubs like living with like it was underneath the house, and I'm just like, I think I don't want to say it's comedic, of course, because, you know, I'm glad no one was hurt or things like that, but it's definitely, again, one of those stories where it's just like, oh, like, you know, there's a family of bears, and like you said, we've seen, you know, videos online, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, of bears or other animals, you know, being found in pools and, you know, digging through trash and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think this is just another one of those cases where, yeah, you know.
I think it's funny. Like, you can tell that curiosity kind of kills like the bear or like whatever. But it's very cute to see, and just like, I don't know, there's something, I guess for me personally, with like animals that act like semi-human in a sense. Like, I feel like I find it a little more funny or like adorable than your average animal. But like in the case of them like going through the trash or just creating a scene in the neighborhood, but it's never a bad one. I feel like they're always wholesome, especially with cubs and bears. So it's always kind of glad, like, I like hearing about it.
Yeah, no, me too. And like I said, I'm glad like both the bears and the people are okay, but I just, yeah.
I love how you brought that up because we haven't had any like incidents where bears or even other wildlife animals kind of like interrogate a family or hurt humans. So it's very interesting to see that. And when you say wholesome, I'm very glad that what they're doing is just probably in their habitat. They're just looking for food, their basic necessities of life. So I'm really glad for that. So yeah.
Said curiosity.
Curiosity.
They're just curious.
Curiosity.
On April 12th, Aled Damien Carbonell Betancourt was found dead in ICE custody from a presumed suicide in Miami, Florida. A report was released by ICE 4 days later on April 16th. This now surpasses 2004's death toll of 28 deaths to over 29 deaths since the start of the federal government fiscal year in October of 2025, a result of the Trump administration and Trump's hard push for migrant arrest. Betancourt entered the U.S. under a program parole, which allowed him and non-citizens to enter without a formal visa, but was arrested back in 2025 for resisting an officer before being transferred to ICE custody. ICE Director Todd Lyons spoke during a congressional hearing saying, quote, "Because we do have the highest amount in detention that ICE has ever had since its inception in 2003, almost $500 million last fiscal year to ensure people have proper care," end quote. Currently, there are about 60,000 immigrants in U.S. detention centers. 2 facilities in Adelanto, California, and El Paso, Texas, are the deadliest, based on the 3 reported deaths within each facility. I just want to touch base again on how incredibly disheartening and just overall tragic ICE is, and I think these detention centers are just another level and just, I guess, another level of what Trump has proven capable of as president, and just in the most negative way possible, of course. I mean, like, this is pretty ridiculous, and considering that, like, this is already the most deaths and it's only April, like, things are just getting that much more out of hand in Trump's hands. I just wanted to know what you guys had to say about that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think the key word that comes to mind for me is how inhumane all of this is. I think regardless of how anyone feels about immigration laws and things like that, again, all of this is just incredibly inhumane. And ICE in general, there just has to be, first of all, I believe ICE should be abolished, but generally speaking, if we are going to have those laws and things implemented, I think, again, in a way that's inhumane. But all that being said, one could argue no one is illegal on stolen land, first of all. Secondly, again, just the treatment of these humans. These are people. These are real-life people. And a lot of them, if not all of them, have been treated like, for lack of better words, animals, and which animals don't deserve that treatment either. But that being said, it's just ridiculous, the amount of deaths, the amount of pain, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, tearing apart families. It's just something that I'm also very passionate about, because again, it's just incredibly inhumane, and to your point, it's just ridiculous.
I love the key point that you said, inhumane, and just far right unconstitutional. I mean, it's such a touchy subject, but even if we get rid of the detention centers, we abolish them, there is still a lot of trauma within these families that have gone into these detention centers, and they've been slipped away from families. They probably had loved ones that have passed because of these horrid or harsh conditions that are in these facilities. But, you know, having a detention center up north and then in Texas, like, it's insane how these detention centers have gotten. And you're right. I mean, 29 deaths already, and we're still in April. We're not even halfway through the year. It's very sad. It's very devastating. And, you know, that's why we should start, like, speaking out a lot more. I feel like we have a little bit, but we still need to be pressing on these people, these government officials, like, hey, stop this now. This has gone far enough. When is it going to end?
Yeah.
So I'm just praying for those people that are in these detention centers. And majority of them are probably U.S. citizens. Yeah. They just, the racial profiling and everything, it still exists, and it's gotten a lot worse. So I'm just praying that there is hope for us to get rid of these horrid conditions in these centers. So
it's really just like a constant cycle of the abusement of power.
Yeah.
And it just kind of goes and always traces back to Trump's name and him just taking everything just that much of a step further. And I think in this case, it applies to ICE. I feel like it kind of applies to a lot of law enforcement in general as of recent, but there has been a lot more of an advancement of just those officials getting so much more caught up in their power. And in specific to ICE, I feel like there's a little more of an underlying factor there with law enforcement where, I mean, we've seen it before, like there's just so much like spewed hatred within them, and obviously that's something that's probably getting projected onto them in these detention facilities. And like you mentioned, like I'm sure like a good chunk of them are U.S. citizens and just placed there unlawfully, and just it's just completely unjustified. There's, once again, no really proper explanation you can give to why this is the case or that like this is appropriate, but there is in no way ever like is it appropriate. And I mean, we mentioned before, and I'll say it again, of just how each week, each time we're here, it's always something new with the Trump administration. And even then, it's just being a dead, or not beating a dead horse, but like Trump continues to beat that dead horse of just bad.
Yeah. I think to kind of sum up what you both said, and I agree with both of you, is to all that being said, we've talked about this time and time again on this show, but at the end of the day, I think we can all agree, like, when is enough enough?
Exactly.
You know? It's incredibly disheartening.
I mean, there was a story about a Marine that got married, and then his groom got sent. And, you know, she was a U.S. citizen and was marrying a Marine, our Marine, might I mention, and just getting sent to one of these detention centers. And, you know, he is devastated. He's just so devastated. It's like, why did you take my wife, my future wife? And they're still trying to fight custody between that as well.
Awful.
Yeah.
That is awful.
Movie theaters are showing signs of a comeback that could reach pre-pandemic heights, but industry leaders say new concerns could threaten the positive momentum. Box office numbers have started to rebound in 2026, with first quarter results coming back with a 23% improvement in ticket sales. Stronger film slates are giving hope to theater owners still recovering from the past few years of disruption. However, that progress is now being overshadowed within the industry by Paramount's $111 billion deal to purchase Warner Bros. Theater groups and industry insiders believe that the merger could reduce competition and limit the number of films released in theaters. Paramount has promised to release 30 films each year if the deal is approved, but analysts doubt they will find enough compelling projects to maintain that pace. At the same time, the theater rebound is largely being driven by a younger crowd, with recent studies showing that Gen Z is the most avid group of attendees to see films on the big screen. All right, so as someone that grew up, you know, watching a lot of movies, I love going to the movies. I'm gonna be honest, since like going to college and, you know, being busy, working 2 jobs, all these things, I don't go to the movies as much as I used to, but I'm curious what you guys' thoughts on, you know, this new deal and, you know, the projected future of what the film industry could look like in terms of having that reach in movie theaters to not just young audiences, but I think all audiences in general.
I feel like right now, like the theaters are getting their ticket sales a little bit up. We have some major big movie projects like Michael came out. May 1st will be Devil's Wears Prada. The Odyssey is coming out. So through all of that, I feel like people are just anticipating for these films. With Paramount, it is a hit and miss with Paramount and their merger with Warner Brothers. It's unlikely because we, at the same time, we are booming with these major films, but the lack of storytelling, movies that are just original with original screenplay, we still need more of that. And I feel like the reboots, like we just saw like the reboot for Scooby-Doo, that one, I feel like there's been like 5 Scooby-Doo live action ones. I mean, we had the main one with Freddie Prinze Jr., and now it's just like, we need more ideas. It's nice to try to, you know, add the younger audiences to these franchise movies. But at the same time, I feel like it just lacks individuality, and it lacks about the creative storytelling. So it's a hit and miss with both. The release dates for films, I feel like those days are a lot shorter. I think it's just not enough time for families or younger audiences to watch these films in time. So that's pretty like my opinion on things.
Yeah. No, I agree with those points. I also feel as if, I mean, it's great to see the progression in movies. And personally, I've never been much of a movie theater person. And I feel like that's kind of changed over the last couple of years. And I also feel like there has been almost a big step forward taken in like the recent year or two in just movie theater, box office sales and everything, which is obviously a big step forward considering what was during COVID. So looking at that now, I just feel like it's really exciting to see. And then all of these different, I mean, so many different productions are like releasing new stuff, and there's a lot of new coming out that I'm excited for. I was actually saw Michael last night, so
Nice.
I was just there. So, but yeah, like it is like very encouraging to see, and I'm glad to see that. I mean, productions are getting their flowers.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think to kind of add on to both of you, I think there's a few factors to consider. I think if we look back kind of like the criticism of the recent Marvel movies, between like post-Endgame to what's been coming soon, or what's going to be coming soon, you know, like Doomsday and all of that. I know there was a lot of criticism initially in the beginning regarding how quickly they were putting out things, and then also the direct, I think released, I don't know how to word this, but like releasing directly on Disney Plus versus like releasing certain things in movies, or like vice versa, you know, like releasing into the theaters and then eventually like on Disney Plus. And so I think with these platforms, it's kind of tricky because of course you have that added convenience of, oh, I can, you know, just watch this at home. But of course you have to take into consideration the fact that a lot of these tend to cost a lot of money. And then it's like, you have to factor in, oh, I have to now get Disney Plus, I have to get Paramount, I have to get Discovery or whatever platform, whatever, to each their own, right? All that being said, though, I think, like I mentioned in the story, you have a lot of our audience of like Gen Z going to see movies, and at the end of the day, as someone that isn't very much an avid moviegoer, but like enjoys going to the movies, I think it's an experience, and I don't know. That's just kind of my personal opinion on it. I actually enjoy going to the movies. I enjoy the experience of like, oh, you get to sit in the theater and, you know, go with friends, you go with family and whatnot. And so, yeah, I think it's very much opinions based, but I really do enjoy, you know, just going to the movies. And I think regardless of how this deal may pan out, I want to believe that there's still going to be, you know, a good amount of reach of, you know, people of all ages, maybe more so our generation, but, you know, people of all ages that will still have that experience, or still want that experience, I should say, of going to the theaters. And only time will tell.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And that wraps up with our recent news of today.
Make sure to stay tuned for more news, views, and info.
Don't forget to follow at Titan TV CSUF on Instagram to stay updated with our weekly episodes.
We'll see you on the next episode of The Report.